कि वो बता दे कि आप समय रहते इतने सारे डिजास्टर से बच जाए, और डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट अपने आप में दूसरी समस्या है, वो तो अलग है। लेकिन यहाँ पे ये देखना पड़ेगा कि आपका हमारा जो वेदर डिपार्टमेंट है वो इतने बड़े
Today is the first sunny day in Delhi in over a week. But while we sit here in the warm sunshine, North India is faced with its worst flood in decades. And we've all seen the images of raging rivers, houses gone, and people lost and stranded. So far, we have 160 people confirmed dead, but there are thousands missing and thousands stranded. We have a few people here with us, basically, who are going to talk to us and tell us about what is happening, where we're going wrong, and possibly the way forward. To my left here, we have Mazoomdar. He's a journalist who writes on the environment. On the extreme right, Sopan Joshi. He's also a journalist and is very well versed with this topic. And of course, we have our very own Atul, Chaurasia, who has written on these topics before. First question to you, Sopan. There's been a lot of talk about it's a man-made disaster, it's a natural disaster. According to you, why has this happened?
Well, if you are going to create a cricket pitch in the middle of a railway track, you are not going to have a good game of cricket. And if the train arrives, you're most likely going to have a wreck. What we have there is something similar. We have constructions, haphazard constructions that have come up in the way of water. And the reason people can build in those areas is the volume of water changes a lot. India gets the strongest monsoon in the world. Most of our water, 70 to 90% of our water, the rainfall is in 3 to 4 months. So for the rest of the year, people tend to think that the land they see is real estate. And in those 3 months, the water tends to remind us that it wasn't real estate. And it isn't real estate, and it shall not remain real estate. So that's the first part of this tragedy.
And Jay, I'd like to bring you in here. What according to you are the reasons? I mean, do you agree with Sopan?
Yeah, obviously. And if you look at the present disaster, there are 3 parts in it. First, there is a so-called cloudburst, the term we use very loosely these days, but it's early monsoon, but it's not unnatural. This kind of rain happen. Maybe it's a record rain in some 10-20 years, but it's not really unnatural. So that volume of water is there. Now stage 2, where the water will go, it meets its channel. And the carrying capacity of these rivers, because of mainly siltation, is much diminished in last 2 decades. And when we talk about deforestation, it's not that trees will stop the flow of water. They don't. But what they do, that they hold on to the soil so that the soil doesn't flow to the channels and block it. So that blockage has happened. And the third part, which is completely avoidable, more easily avoidable than these 2 parts, the second part is that the construction which is happening at the edge of the river. But now if you go to these hill stations, they are 80% made of concrete slabs, and they're 3 to 4 stories high. And the load of these constructions is enormous. So if we add all this, and when the river current hits the basement rock, it will give out, and it is not at all surprising. And of these 3 parts, I think only the first part is the true natural bit in it, that is beyond probably human control. The part 2 and part 3 is completely of our doing.
Okay. And Sopan, before I go to Atul, I just wanted to ask you another question. I mean, exactly what Jay said, the surprise is the cloudburst. I mean, but it's not such a surprise. We know things like this happen. Like you said, in terms of the season, there is a rainy season. A lot of the reports that are coming from the ground, they said last year, government officials came and warned us, so we moved out. This year there was no warning. I mean, where is the problem? Why are we not being able to predict these things? Why are we not being able to be prepared better for situations which we know have happened in the past and can possibly happen again?
Part of the reason is that the real estate market cannot factor in what we call a natural disaster. The real estate market goes by other concerns, more immediate concerns. People look to extend their properties. All of us do. There isn't, you look in this area, there won't be one property which is not encroached in some way or the other. Then the natural question is, why didn't people do this earlier? But over hundreds of years, people would have seen that these things happened, and they created certain codes which were embedded in religious practices. Now all of us know that policy, as we call it now, in the old world that was religion. When you did not want people to do certain things, or you wanted them to do things in a certain way, those codes were embedded in religion. So there were lots of religious norms and practices in terms of giving space to things that you don't understand. Now we live under the illusion that we understand all of this. Actually, we don't. So that creates a kind of false confidence, and we think that we have ways of tackling these things, when actually we do not. We cannot control the monsoon. It's the largest transfer of mass from the southern to the northern hemisphere. All tropical areas get the monsoon, but no place in the world gets a monsoon like as strong a monsoon as India, which may have to do with the hypothesis is that it has to do with the Tibetan plateau reflecting heat at such altitudes. And then the strongest monsoon comes and collides with the tallest wall in the world, which is the Himalaya.
Yeah.
None of these things are in our control. What we can control is our greed, but the market has no way to do that.
Now, Atul, I mean, you had written a story which basically amounted to saying the death of a river. And were these some of the factors that you came across?
सबसे बड़ी ये इम्पोर्टेंट चीज़ है अवलोक, ये पूरे जो मतलब 700-800 किलोमीटर की जो मैंने पूरा ट्रैवल किया यमुना के उसमें, तो ये सबसे बड़ा प्रॉब्लम तो है ही है कि रियल एस्टेट का जो पूरा बिजनेस है, नदियों के किनारे इस लेवल तक एनक्रोचमेंट है, या फिर जितने विजुअल अभी हम देख रहे हैं, ये पूरे के पूरे में रियल एस्टेट का ही सबसे बड़ा प्रॉब्लम निकला कि आप नदियों के कितने पास तक जाके कहाँ तक कंस्ट्रक्शन करेंगे। नदी कोई ये बॉटलनेक सिचुएशन ही हो गई धीरे धीरे, अब वहाँ से कहाँ पानी जाएगा, क्योंकि एक उसका कोर्स होता है, कभी 1 किलोमीटर इधर, कभी 1 किलोमीटर। आप जाइए देखिए इलाहाबाद में कितने में गंगा बहती है, 3 किलोमीटर लंबा पूरा चौड़ा इलाका है, 4 किलोमीटर। तो अब धीरे धीरे लोगों ने इतना वो कर दिया है, उसको कम सकरा कर दिया है, पानी निकलेगा कहाँ से। और ये ऐसा नहीं कि मतलब ये पहली बार है, हिमालय तो थोड़ा अस्थिर ही है कि वहाँ पे आते रहते हैं इतने लंबे समय से, मतलब। लेकिन अगर आप फ्रिक्वेंसी देखेंगे तो मैं अभी कहीं पढ़ रहा था, पूरा देख रहा था कि 1898 में एक बार कहीं लैंडस्लाइड थी, उसके बाद फिर 1924 में हुई, फिर मतलब 10 साल 15 साल कभी कभार ऐसा होता है, और वो नेचुरल एक होता है। पिछले एक डिकेड में अगर हम देखें तो 2000 से लेकर 2010 के बीच में हर साल 2-3 लैंडस्लाइड और मेजर वो हैं। तो ये एक तो ये है कि आप कितना इंक्रोचमेंट करते हैं रियल एस्टेट का, दूसरा ये है कि जो ब्लास्टिंग और ये सब जो स्टोन क्रशिंग और दूसरे एक्टिविटीज़ शुरू हुई हैं, क्योंकि हिमालय का जो ये वाला इलाका बहुत सेंसिटिव है।
Jay, Atul brings up an interesting point in terms of encroachment of real estate, pushing further and further into areas which we weren't there before. Is it simply a combination of the way we're building or the way we're going in terms of the areas that we're going into, or is there more to it?
Himalayas is a very young mountain. If you look, if you compare it with Vindhyas or Aravalli, so it will be unstable from time to time, and that's something we cannot help. And the other part of the problem is that these big dams that are coming up there in dozens, in hundreds in fact, that is something which is in public domain. We talk about it, and there is resistance from scientific ecological constituency, and still it's happening. But the other things that are happening there that he mentioned, sand mining or blasting or construction, these things in itself, one instance doesn't look enormous, but they're happening at so many points, and the cumulative effect is really serious. And it starts right from the Vavar areas. If you go to Corbett, which is in fact in the plains, Koshi mining starts from there, and all the hotels, none of them have bought any construction material. The entire thing is directly lifted from the Kosi riverbed. Now some claim that you can pick up boulders because it actually eases up the river, but the sand you can't pick up like that, and it creates very serious problem in terms of river flow and hydrology. The amount of risk which is there is unavoidable. Now how much we move into that risk zone, that's our choice, and the choice that we have made consciously to put ourselves to risk. And then when this kind of things happen, and there is a huge human cost to pay, then you can't really complain. I'm not justifying death or giving excuses, but I think it's more of a suicide than natural fury causing something disastrous.
Sopan, do you agree with that? I mean, are we, by going into these areas and building the way we're building, we're setting ourselves up for disaster?
Well, I had exactly the same word in mind that Jay mentioned, suicide. This is suicide. Again, something I'd like to add to what Jay said and what Atul also pointed out. This is actually the youngest mountain system in the world. The collision of the Indian plate with the Asian plate is dated to about 23 million years ago. Now, if you look at the age of the Earth, which is 4,500 million years, this is yesterday. So this is not even like a fully mature, it is not even the teenage of this mountain system. It's still a juvenile mountain system. So Jay mentioned silt earlier. There's no river system anywhere in the world, apart from I guess the Andes, where you will see such silt loads. So what you get is not just water, but huge amounts of silt. Now, the silt is seen only as a problem.
Yeah.
What we do not realize is, but for this silt, a large part of what is now called Indo-Gangetic Plains might have gone under the sea. Because, as geologists will tell you, the Indian plate is subducting under the Asian plate, which is why the Asian plate is now 4 kilometers up in the sky. That used to be the ocean floor earlier.
Yeah.
What is now the Tibetan plateau. So that means the Indian plate is going under. Now, in geology, this means that right on the side of the plate that is subducting, you will have a trough. You will have a low-lying area. The silt from the Himalaya has filled up that low-lying area.
Okay.
It's fertile silt. I mean, there was a scientist who pointed out that around the time the Himalaya came up, there was so much phosphorus released that the spurt in plant life thereafter sucked out all the carbon from the atmosphere and led to global cooling. Right? These are the kind of systems we are dealing with here. But these systems are way beyond our imagination. We move by what we see in our neighborhood. Our lives are mostly constituted by what we see. If one person is encroaching onto the riverbed or mining sand from the riverbed, as Jay pointed out, chances are I'll take my chances with it.
Okay.
Right? And those are the concerns that we are driven by. It's just not possible to imagine the scale of what we are dealing with here. In fact, not 23 million. 23 million is the collision. The biggest rise in the Himalaya is not older than 5 million years.